Right, so we'll start with a really quick recap before we go on to our next pages. So we've got page number 1, which is circles and stitching. Page number 2, which was the loads of tiny French knots with some running stitch. Number 3, seen some lovely examples of this, little bits of weaving, really teeny tiny. I did mine without a backing piece, but if you want a backing piece to it to make it a bit easier, please feel free to just do your own thing. Then I've still got to stitch these ones in, so I've got my rectangles with a little bit of tatting, a button, and lots of different little bits of stitching on there. We've got our little breather, really simple, Suffolk puff with a square and just some really simple stitching. Just added a little button onto there. And then we've got our really calm one, really neutral colours. May still do a little bit more stitching on there. So if I'm not sure whether or not I've finished them, I'm just pinning them in place. So we're going on to our next pages. It's very exciting. So our next page, you'll know if you did the Sew for the Soul book, one of the things that I love doing is a little tag. So the next page that I'm doing, I've got a backing piece of fabric. I've got a little piece off the edge. I love the edges of the fabric where it has the colour registration marks on it. And then I've started popping together just a little fabric tag, got a little bit of lace on there, a little bit of a cord. So this will get stitched a little bit more with some more decoration. So that's going to be our tiny little tag that's going to go in there. That's page number 7. Then number 8, I decided we'd go for something a little bit darker and then some tiny circles. So these circles that I've done, I drew round a button, but they're about 1.5 centimetres in diameter. About 3/4 of an inch, and I've just pinned those in place. Not quite sure yet what I'm going to do with the stitching, but you'll see on Instagram when I do my next video what's going to go on there. And then the next one, I've still to decide on my backing piece, but I decided to do some teeny tiny paper piecing. I've got to get a background piece of fabric for this, but I thought I'd just do a really quick demo on just doing the paper. It's still got the paper in the back. I'll have to pull that out once I've ironed them. But basically, you want to get yourself a rectangle. I know some of you have got cutters that can cut these out anyway, which is fantastic. But my little hexagons, just short of 2 centimetres, point to point. I did these on PowerPoint on a computer. You can just draw a hexagon shape, and I tend to then just print them out on a piece of paper, cut them out, and then you've got them. Just that I challenge myself because I've done bigger ones in the past. The fabrics that you want to use, you probably want to use some nice cottons, some fairly thin fabric, because these are really small. You don't want a really bulky fabric. And basically, we just lay your little hexagon just on the fabric. Just trim it. Don't take too much off. You do want to be able to fold it, and so it is manageable. And I've done these before sometimes, and I've ended up taking a little bit too much fabric off. Okay, and then we're going to finger fold them. So decide which side you're going to start on, and what you're going to do is fold that over and just press it with your finger. Then the next side, fold that over, okay, and just hold it. Get a needle with some machine cotton. This is a slightly different technique to what I've done before. Usually what I've done is gone all the way through and then left the tacking stitches in, but I want to be able to take the card out. So what you're going to do, hopefully you can see this, is pick up this little bit of fabric at this side and then come up on the fold. So I've gone in at one side and gone over at the other. I would bring this a little bit closer, but my video camera, if I put it on autofocus, it just goes a little bit doolally. The very first one, I usually do that twice, just so it holds that in place. Then rotate, get your fabric, fold it over again, and you're going to do the same thing again. Just go in the first bit of fabric, the bit underneath, then come up the top. So I'm not going through the paper, I'm just stitching these corners in, and the stitches that I'm doing I will leave them in when I've finished. Next one, fold that over, same again. You don't have to do a double stitch, it's just sometimes I find when I start off I'll do a double one just to get me going, especially with them being so small. It just seems to hold it in place a little bit better. And then get round to your last one, fold that over, stitch that, double one there. Sometimes it can be a little bit easier if you do it with card than with paper, because the card will not bend. But I know you can buy the shapes already done. I just love the patterns. There's loads of different shapes as well. I'm just doing little hexagons, but you could do any shape you wanted. Then when you get to the end, just give yourself a little loop, pop it through, trim it off, and then you're just going to build up some patterns with your hexagons. So you could go very traditional and just go like with the flower shapes with one in the middle and ones all around the edge. I quite like them a little bit all over the place really, but I've got to choose a background fabric because they're like that. I probably want something that's a little bit more contrasting. It's one of those things when you just can't put your hand on something straight away. Maybe the grey might be quite nice. So I might have the grey for the back. No, they're going to look quite nice on them. So I've got my first shape, I've got my second shape, and then I've got my other little hexagon. So I might decide to stitch that one on there. So to stitch them together, you just put them face to face, and then get your needle, and then you're just going through the very, very edge of the fabric. It's like a whipping stitch, just coming back round on itself. Teeny, teeny, tiny. These are great to do while you're sat watching the telly or an evening. Took me all evening just to do these bits, so hats off to anybody that has done a full quilt. That's a lot of patience. Okay. Oops. So I'll be carrying on stitching these. I will keep doing an update every now and again here on YouTube, because I know a few people have messaged me, said that they don't do Instagram. When I do put it on my Instagram, it does go on my Facebook page as well. So if you're not on Instagram, you might be able to find me. If you just look for Anne Brooke, Textile Artist on Facebook. I do duplicate posts on there as well. So what I will do with these next is I'll iron them, and then once they're ironed, I will pull the paper out the back, and then the stitching, oops, just holds it all together. And then when you've laid them on, I'll pin them in place, and then you'll do tiny little tacking stitches around the edge, just to fix those in place as well. I just really like, you could even just do a whole page that's just those shapes if you wanted to. So remember, you can make this totally your own. So those are your next 3 pages. Keep an eye out on Instagram to see close-ups, and I'll add some more close-ups just after this little bit so you can see where the pages ended up.